So the book that I wrote that was published by Unbound, Stranger in My Heart,
Yes.
was a journey in a way to find my father. Retracing, I went to China to retrace his escape route that he did during the war. So he'd been taken prisoner by the Japanese in Hong Kong, and he
Right.
escaped, and he made his way 1,200 miles across China.
Wow. And did you do the whole 1,200 miles?
No, I did the edited highlights luxury
Right.
version
Right.
because I didn't have time to do the whole thing. It took him 2 months,
Yes.
a mixture of on foot, by train, by boat, by truck, etc.
Yeah.
But for me, it was really important to do the journey to connect with him,
Yes.
um, because he died when I was 18, and I never really felt like I got to know him as adult to adult. And so retracing his journey, and at the same time of year, was part of my kind of reconnection with him, because reading his diaries and letters and things hadn't quite brought it alive in the same way as a lived experience.
That's fascinating. I
Um,
what what prompted you to do it as opposed to think about it and not do it?
Stubbornness, I think, mainly. It was quite difficult to arrange because this was in 2013 that I did the trip, and I could go to China, but all of the tour operators wanted me to go to the Forbidden City and the Great
Right.
Wall and the Panda Sanctuary, and I didn't want to go to any of those places.
No.
I wanted to retrace my dad's route, and it took me probably a year of hunting around trying to find a tour operator that would take me where I wanted to go. And so that was quite difficult. But the more difficult it was, the more determined I was to make it happen.
Right.
Um,
But I suppose, I mean, it took you some years to decide to start, though. So what was the trigger to actually start and not just to think about it?
I think it was the map. When I was reading my dad's letters and things, he would refer to places, and he would use the pinyin that was in use at the time, and I was trying to figure out what his actual route was,
Right.
and I had to sort of translate it. So, for example, Waichow that he talks about was spelt Waichow, but they changed the system in 1958, and it's now spelt Huizhou.
Right.
Anyway, once you figure that out,
Yeah.
it becomes quite addictive then trying to find these places. And then I had topographical maps, and I thought, well, this looks rather interesting country. And also from his descriptions in his letters, he was talking about the mountains and the tung oil trees being in bloom and what have you.
Right.
And I thought, I have to see this. And once I'd made that decision, it was gonna happen somehow or another. And it was only when I got there, really, and I started off in Hong Kong, which was easy peasy because everything's in English.
Yes.
But as soon as you cross the border, it becomes quite a bit more difficult. And I had a few kind of hairy experiences en route with transport and meeting people and what have you. And it was only when I was actually there that it occurred to me that it was actually quite a tricky thing to do, and that doing it on my own, put me in a slightly vulnerable position, shall we say.
Right.
But
Did,
it's too
had you
late then. I was
talked,
there.
had you talked to him a lot about the places and the experiences?
Well, no, because he died when I was 18, and he never mentioned it.
Right.
As is very common with that wartime generation, not a word was said.
No. I just want to highlight the fact that trying to cross over a bridge, we end up in the middle of the motorway. Was it like, Mary, to remember doing that trip while I'm doing this particular walk on our screens?
Well, it's interesting what you notice, isn't it? I mean, here we are looking at a motorway and cars and what have you. And actually, what I'm interested in and what I'm noticing, therefore, is the trees.
Mm,
So because that connects me into the story that I'm telling, because
yes.
it's the landscape itself.
So you sort of
It's not the
screen
building
out
environment.
what isn't relevant to the story you're telling.
But I think we all do that, don't we? Because
Yeah.
we're absolutely flooded with information all the time, and
Yeah.
you've got to filter it. Otherwise, you'd just be within a permanent state of overwhelm.
Yeah. What's it? I'm curious to know what it's like for David, who isn't remembering an experience of walking in China, but is hearing about one while watching this thing going on here on the screen. What's that like, David?
Well, it's like listening to two different stories at the same time. Because they don't, one doesn't really relate to the other, except that walking.
I slightly lost some of that.
The two landscapes are different.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not a problem. You can do both. I don't have an issue with that.
Yeah, it feels to me a lot like, I mean, I'm sitting here clicking and clicking on my mouse as I walk us down my fingers getting sore. But as I do that, I just feel like we're all walking in this direction and I'm hearing about another territory, and it's
like you're walking with somebody and they're talking about somewhere else while they walk along. Here. Yeah.
And now I'm walking backwards, I beg your pardon. So you hadn't spoken to him, you had material that was tantalizing. And I really love the fact that you drew attention to the verbal mystery of the maps and the change in the language. It's not just a picture with a map, it's actually some sort of, because you're a writer and you're having this mysterious experience of that, you know, how to interpret a map and the words.
Yeah, and then of course, when you actually get into the landscape, you've got to interpret it again. You know, it's a very different landscape. Me walking around in it in 2013 with a guide, compared to him walking around in it as a destitute refugee with the possibility of being attacked by the Japanese.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it thinking, isn't it beautiful? And he might have been looking at it thinking, could there be Japanese troops hiding behind those bushes or around that bend in the river? So our relationship with landscape is very contingent, isn't it, on what we're doing?
I suppose I'd love to know, Mary, and I have no attachment to what your answer is, but what made you decide that you would join us on this strange thing today?
Well, I just thought it was an interesting idea, and I love walking. I wasn't mad keen on the London bits, I have to say. I'm
right
out here in the countryside where there's greenery and what have you. And it was nice seeing that rather pretty church that we just passed by a few minutes ago.
It was nice, wasn't it?
You know, and it's always more fun walking with somebody else, and you never know what's going to crop up. And I thought it would be an interesting little journey to do. And well, as you can tell, I'm quite keen on pilgrimages of one sort or another.
Yes, definitely. Oh, look, this is the first time it really feels like we're not just walking along a B road or even an A road.
There, that's lovely. That's my kind of road.
Yeah, it's a quick screen grab of that one. And let's see, let's go very slowly down this bit then. Although, of course, with Google, you can't really go slowly. If you click, it takes you to the next clickable spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's annoying sometimes. You can't see the bit you want because you go past it and then back past it.
Oh, look, that's much better, isn't it? Oh, this is great. At last. I was a bit disappointed because, Mary, lovely, isn't it? When you said that you hadn't wanted to do the London bit and this was nicer, I thought, I hope it will be, because I have a horrible feeling it's just going to be through more and more sort of semi-suburban, just
endless estates.
Yeah, we've had a few of those, but let's wander on